It's really annoying.
Yeah, no, that.
This is tech space, the final frontier.
Yeah, this is really funky. Ryan was there. I can admit it, maybe he's flying space with us.
Can you close? You're sharing the screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then I would drop that down.
City council meeting.
You're sharing. Because it's probably. Minimize.
Seriously.
Go to, just drop it down. Let's see what's that minimize. This is weird.
Nice, Budget.
That's annoying.
My 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's really.
I have a new guy.
Hi,
Jim
hello,
Phillips.
I'm Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Because I can't even like see anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I just need to admit that somebody else is here. We got two participants, Austin Island. I'm not moving, so you can hear us. All right, well,
Here,
I'm gonna switch to this. And there's the agenda. If anybody else comes, let them in.
That was bizarre.
It is very odd.
You
I'm good. You?
good?
Have you met Jim Phillips?
I don't think so yet. No. Scott Sorensen. Jim Phillips. Nice to meet you, Jim. Pleased to meet you.
Almost got a ponytail going on there.
Yeah, my wife and daughter talked me into doing something different. I don't know how long I can go with this.
Keep it on because
You can do the man bun.
it's still-
Definitely, that will never happen. Ever. Glad to hear that.
All right, it's officially 7 o'clock. And all is well. We at least have our Zoom meeting started and Ryland's there.
Very good.
So hopefully it says we have audio. All right, let's start with doing roll call. We'll start on my right, Mark.
Mark Johnson?
Jim Phillips.
Wendy Phillips.
Jim Richards.
Paul Janetto.
Scott Sorensen.
Perfect. There is or was a sheet going around.
It's right here.
Please sign in, everybody. Give me your name, any updated phone number, cell phone, and email, please. Just to make sure nothing changed for this year, as this is our first meeting of 2022. It's been a while since our group has met. It was actually October 14th was our last meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or edits or changes to the minutes? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Beautiful. For the agenda today, I'm making one addition. We're gonna add Nick Kraus to the first part of our, as an open discussion about heated storage units that he wants to potentially put in on a property he's looking to buy. And so that'll be our first item, and then we'll discuss updating the code for lot size, minimum lot size requirements, particularly in R1, R2 zones. So those are our two items on our agenda. I'm going to make the motion to accept that agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Mark. Any other edits or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Beautiful. With that, Nick, I'll open the floor up to you, just so the rest of the committee knows a little bit of background, and you guys can update more too. But Nick is looking at buying the property, essentially in front of the other storage units off of Minnesota Avenue, just.
That's the ones that are for sale with the for sale sign and stuff, okay.
And he had originally had submitted a CUP, conditional use permit application for that lot. However, if you recall, originally that lot, we had done a rezoning from B2 to M1, but since they didn't go through with it, it automatically got reverted by city council back to B2. And so that's B2. Storage units are not allowed in B2. They're only allowed in M1, designated or zoned things. And so that's where we're at. And so at that point, it was realized that we couldn't just do it with a CUP because it actually would need a rezone, which also needs a public hearing. So I know Nick wanted to come and sort of have a discussion with Planning and Zoning Committee. Nick, just for your full disclosure and awareness of the process, and for the record, just so you also know, for the process, it does, based on the city attorney and everybody's looking at this thing, it will require a rezoning back from B2 to M1, which means another public hearing, which could happen at the same time as a conditional use permit. But it is two applications and fees that would have to be simultaneously submitted. At least the rule is, as thumb is we have to have 10 days of posting it to public. So at least 10 days prior to next month's committee meeting, which is April, whatever the second Thursday is. Yeah, 14th. So that that's the process. We would hold the public hearing. And just so you also know, the Planning and Zoning Committee, which does have two city council members on it, Jim squared, our two Jims, Jim Phillips and Jim Richards are city council members as well. But Planning and Zoning makes the recommendation. And so based on those two things, they would each have to meet the criteria for both, for the rezoning, as well as the criteria that's listed in the CUP application that you had filled out and seen. If it meets those criteria, then we would be making a recommendation to city council, and then at the following meeting, Tuesday that they meet, they would then take that recommendation and they are the deciding vote in factor. So they can go along with us or they can overrule us, but ultimately they make the resolution and final decision. But I'll open it up to you because I know you wanted to ask some questions and have that opportunity.
I'm actually gonna let Vanessa do the first talk because she has the history, you know, is that?
Yeah. So good evening. I'm Vanessa Hines. I know that I was before you probably about this time last year, talking about these pieces of property with the current owner. I think we were all virtual at that point in time, so it's nice to see everybody. So, last year, as you mentioned, we went through this process, we had rezoned it and then went through the conditional use permit to use it as a surface storage lot. Mr. Austin, the current, or Mr. Lucas, the current owner, was wanting to do, for RVs, ATVs, trailers, those sorts of things. That didn't end up working out and now the property is for sale. And Nick is looking to do the heated storage. Right now, we've got a preliminary plan. Have you shared that at all, the preliminary plan we have?
No.
The layout?
Nope. I
I
have a copy here.
Yeah, I've got a couple copies if you're willing to share. I can share this one here. We just wanted to bring this before you guys before it comes next month. I printed 3.
So that's
Let me
that's kind of like what
guys
they
can
might
share.
want.
Absolutely.
That's not an exact.
So these will
copy.
be, each unit would be about 50 by 20 foot heated storage. They would have a water and sanitary service to them as well. And then the intent is to lease some units and then maybe potentially sell some units. That's kind of to be determined at this point, how that's gonna really flush out. Nick is looking to phase the development. I think on the sheet he handed out there, phases 1 through 5. It could happen, potentially depending on how well things do. 1 phase, 2 phases, 3 phases. But I think right now he's planning for 5. With that first building on that southern parcel to be first. This has a very similar flow to what we proposed last year when we did the surface storage. the shared access with that existing storage units. And then the northern access that's already there would stay in place. We'd still need to abide by all of the greenbelt requirements, stormwater management and those kinds of things. So we just wanted to get in front of you guys for a first blush look at it and see if you had any questions, comments, concerns before we move too much further.
So you said the plan was to lease some and to rent some?
Sell some, I
And
think.
possibly sell, yep. So,
Oh, sell.
so,
Sorry.
correct. No, you're fine. So the first building, in order to probably move on to phase two, I would probably need to sell those out, right? So have Olmsted break those down into parcels.
Yep, so that would be through a condo plat. So once the building is constructed, you can go through Olmsted County and do what's called a condo plat. And it would basically give each unit its own parcel so that he could then sell those parcels and they would be owned individually. It would need to have a covenant, for maintenance and upkeep and whatnot. But that would all be done through the condo plat process.
Is this facing north is how you have that one set up then?
North.
Or is it gonna be this?
Yep, north is this way. So Minnesota Avenue is right here. This is the wetlands and the storage units are here.
Okay. So the existing ones are behind this then, right? Okay.
To the west. Yeah.
Did I hear you say that you're having water and to this service as well, water and sanitary sewer?
Yes, and Nick actually met with Joe Palin already to kind of talk preliminary and go through some of that with him.
In time frame for this compared to when the sewer project?
It was funny because that actually woke me up last night going, wait a second, I think Joe said it's not even there yet.
No.
So I would like to get the buildings built if everything goes well, sometime this summer, building, for clarification,
One.
right?
Right.
We'd like to get going, but it depends on obviously building materials. And we are still waiting to get back soil samples. From what we know from Mr. Lucas, it's pretty wet, even at 10 feet down. And we have to go 25 feet for a building to make sure. And so it's a matter of deciding how wet that is, how much we have to backfill, how much sand we have to bring in and such.
Yeah, that property has a unique drainage and water
Seems like it.
Very.
issue.
It seems like it.
It looks like from the drawing, you're aware of all the requirements. It looks like it's all paved. Because that was one of the requirements I know with last time with the open.
We've talked about that extensively.
Yes, extensively.
So, just so again, just full disclosure, because it's part of the city's requirements now for all things, we want everything to have paved surfaces.
And that's, and to be honest with you, that's probably the biggest reason I wanted to phase it. Because I can't afford to concrete the whole lot or asphalt the whole lot. So as one building goes in, the concrete around it goes in. As the second building goes in, the concrete around it. And I'm building it in such a manner that aesthetically from Minnesota Avenue and for the backdoor neighbors, that it will look nice, right? So everything else will be mowed nicely and then you move on to another building. And that's a matter of, to be honest with you, that's a matter of if it succeeds, right? I'm hoping to have building one up. If that takes me a while and that's kind of where it stops, if I don't see the interest, then I probably just keep mowing lot two.
Yep, and the intent really with that too was a single building on that single parcel. So if it, ends up being
So
just
of these
that,
buildings, which would be your first one? Is it this?
Phase
Yeah,
one.
phase one.
yep, the big square one.
And is a plan that they all look like this?
That is just Todd Utsby, who has some in Rochester. He's kind of been helping me along the line here too. So obviously they'll be, different colored probably, along the way, but
this
ideally, yes,
style.
that's the idea.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you mentioned the water and sewer. So what was the plan that each unit would have a water and sewer hookup? Or
No,
is it just
actually,
water and
probably
sewer?
one per building. There'll
Okay.
probably be one bathroom per building
Okay.
that's kind of a communal bathroom,
Okay,
right?
Oh, those 16-foot doors?
14 foot, 14. I believe they're 14 by 14.
Okay. And gas or, not gas or electric heating or?
I haven't decided that yet, I'll be honest with you. I'm thinking gas, but those mini splits are so efficient now with electric that maybe that'd be the way to do it. That way everybody can control their own, because the reason and I know I'm getting way into this, but the reason that I don't want to have a bathroom in every one of them is because if somebody doesn't shut off their heat, shuts off their heat, we've got plumbing, we've got a problem. So one per bathroom that I can control and make sure that that's heated at all times. And then the mini splits, if they choose to turn it on, they can. That's their stuff freezing, not mine. But so full disclosure, I'm on a 60-day, and I realize I have to wait till the next meeting, but I just want everybody to kind of understand that I'm on a 60-day purchase agreement here. So I have until March 29th to back out without any problems from, from Mr. Austin Lucas. But now you have me.
I
sitting here.
did, sorry, it throws me off.
So I don't expect any answers, but I'm hoping, to maybe get like I think this might be feasible, not a certain yes, but I'm assuming since it was already M1, went back to B2, I'm assuming it wouldn't be hard to go back to an M1. Mostly because I think aesthetically, these are better looking than a trailer or a car sitting in a parking lot. You know what I mean? So we're trying to make it look nice. I've had several flip houses and rental houses in Rochester, and I'm not a slumlord by any way, shape, or form. I like my stuff really nice. And so this will be a very nice addition to Orinoco. I chose not to build in Rochester because I have two other businesses in Rochester, and it's just a pain. It's really a pain in Rochester. And we live really close here. We're just out on 67th Northwest, so it's just an easy jump up the road here.
Well, as I mentioned, planning and zoning doesn't have the final authority, it's city
Correct.
council. But thoughts or concerns from the committee?
I'd be supportive of it. I think it would be better than the open storage that they were originally planning.
Yeah, I would be too.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a good proposal. I would just encourage you to look at both the rezoning and the CEP conditions that have to be met, because that's how we judge you. That's how planning and zoning judges you. I don't judge you just because I like it. We have to go by the code. Since it was already approved at one time to go that way, I would think that you'd have a good shot.
Right.
Again, can't guarantee you anything, but you do have two council people here who then also go back to the council and also voice what they heard, and then you also have the right at the city council meeting to also speak there too, so. Trish,
Can I add comments?
absolutely.
Please, good to see you all again. For those that I know, I am the neighbor that lives directly across Minnesota Avenue from this property. I address you not because I'm concerned about what you're doing, but because I'm concerned on the effect on my property. My property right now is dealing with two primary things that really concern me. One is drainage. As you know, you've got the wetland there. My property sits, that property kind of goes down toward a culvert. That culvert then drains into my property. Right now, and I know this won't last forever, but right now that creates big drainage issues for me because my septic's on that side of my property. So what we've noticed is our outside tap, there's a bad smell to it. So I'm concerned about drainage because the other thing that happens is it does flood that property on my side. In regards to the culvert itself, there is no, I want to use the word fencing, but there's nothing to block debris coming
great.
through. So there's nothing. Okay, most frustrating. And I recognize that you can't necessarily control that, but the thing with the drainage, every time you pave a portion of it, that's less being absorbed into the land and more coming right straight to my place. So the other concerns that I have are twofold. One is lighting. Right now, all the lighting is on the back toward Minnesota Avenue, which is great. I don't have a problem with that. But right now, I literally have a street light here, a street light here, and a street light here. My property is lit up like a runway to start with. I don't need a runway. And I would just ask that, because the code does require some trees, I would ask that some trees be planted toward Minnesota Avenue. Happy to provide some tamarack for the wetland, because honestly, that has been frustrating for me personally as well. All of my bedroom windows are on that side and it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, actually, the way that the setup of the first building is, it's actually turned away from your house.
Mhm.
So the light would go this way, not that way. Yeah,
Actually, all of the buildings.
yeah, actually, all of the buildings
are
go
that
that
way.
way.
Okay,
Correct.
because right
None of
now,
them face you.
right now, they're actually, if you stand in my driveway right now, I have a really good runway going on.
I think we drive by it on the way out, so I'll just
Right, yeah.
Look at
slow
it,
down. I
because
will.
honestly, it's for me personally, I mean, we have shades and whatever like everyone else
Sure.
does, but it is, the lighting is definitely distracting for
Right.
just regular homeowners.
I think one thing, just to piggyback on that, when working with Joe, the city engineer, we'll probably provide, he'll ask us to provide a photometric plan that'll show kind of the intensity of the light on this site. Obviously, I can't fix what's happening behind
No,
us.
and you know what? I mean, I expect you to have lighting and I want you to have security. That's absolutely cool. Like I say, just maybe some trees or something that's gonna block all that because I really don't like the runway. And that's it for me. I just really wanted to address those things. Good to see you all again. Have a great night. Good
Fair
luck
enough.
with your
Thank you,
project.
Garrett.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks. See you. Any other questions or discussion from the group?
I guess access is, looks like is it just this primary one here, or is this gonna be, it looks like this will be one.
This is the shared one with the, so those storage units are back
Yeah,
here, so we
okay.
would share this one. This is kind of that. It's just to
Future.
provide the circulation through there. If somebody comes in with a trailer,
Yeah, okay.
not everybody's good at backing up.
No, I
Well, I can
appreciate.
tell you one person in my home.
And we've already planned on concreting it from Minnesota Avenue up past my entry, so, for a clean sweep in to keep gravel off.
Those were all concerns that had come up last time, so it sounds like you've addressed a lot of the issues.
Yeah.
And like I said, as Trish even pointed out, we do know that lot has a lot of issues with drainage.
Yep.
So keeping that in, as it's engineered and designed to minimize that impact.
My curiosity, because I'm a chiropractor, so I just wanted to put up a building. I didn't know I was gonna be a developer, right? So this is all new. This is like Greek to me, which is why Vanessa's great to have here. But if you're across Minnesota Avenue, how does that water get over there? How
There's a
does
culvert
that?
that goes under the street.
Street.
So if you look at the side of the street, the slopes bank down and there's a pipe. And it just flows right under. And that's something that we looked at pretty extensively with Joe this last iteration around when we were designing that basin. The rules are that we have to meet pre-existing runoff rates. So while I can't fix her drainage issues, I can't make them worse. So that's why we have that basin there, because that's gonna help hold back stormwater runoff so that it doesn't just flood her site. It'll slowly drain
Sure,
it
gotcha.
and some of it will infiltrate pretty wet soil already. But the intent of that is to make sure that we're not inundating her property.
Is it grading or a screen, would that be the city's responsibility?
I think so. I mean, it's something that we could coordinate, perhaps we have Craig put it in and the city just pays him for it, while we're out there doing it. So we can definitely bring that up with Joe.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't want to tick off neighbors.
No.
No. Uh-uh.
Any other questions for us?
No,
I don't think so.
thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
yeah, I appreciate it.
Not a
I have
problem.
one question, and this may be a really dumb question, but is a bathroom facility always required in a storage unit?
No.
Why is the bathroom facility part of this project
So,
in each
so
phase?
Todd Utsby, who has these buildings, I rented a unit from him for around 5 months. And I can't believe when I'm there for several hours, if I had to run to a couple blocks away to a Quick Trip, how annoying that is when you're trying to get something done.
And so it's just as a
It's just as
courtesy,
a courtesy. That's it.
And to attract the people that would really appreciate that and want to
Correct.
stay at your
And
storage.
plus, I'll be honest with you, it brings up a little higher price point.
Well, that makes total sense to me.
know,
I was trying to figure out
Yep.
where that came in, and so
Yeah.
now it makes sense.
Because I don't have to heat them either, but, you know, a lot of times, I see it all over, you know, when people don't have heated, the question is on Facebook, do you have heated? Do you have heated? Do you have heated?
And there's a demand for heated, there's no question about it, you know, so that part of it. And I know the storage places that I've been at have always had a restroom, you know, facility that's been associated with that as well, so.
High quality.
Yeah, 'cause if someone wants to work on their car, or maybe they have.
Especially if you're gonna be selling them. You know,
Oh,
that's.
man cave.
Now you got it, Paul.
One of these rent.
Honey, I gotta go to work.
Where you were.
700.
I'll see you in a couple days.
If you want to have heat and electric, you
That's what I was
hook
wondering,
that
like,
through the utilities
together.
yourself. So in my case, I had to call RPU and have the electric turned on and put in
Okay.
my name for 4 months.
And so those were the size you could fit a larger RV in
They're
there?
1,000 square feet each. They're
Okay.
They're 20 by 50.
Okay,
Yeah, they're
Okay.
pretty good size and they're high enough that if someone wanted to add a mezzanine inside, they could do that as well.
nice.
And they're not gonna be workspace for anybody to do anything but their own personal.
Correct. It's not a
It's not
business.
intended to be a trade shop. Somebody shouldn't be changing oil for the whole city.
No, I mean, yeah, once you put a mezzanine in, you could do lots of other things if.
Right. So I have a commercial building and I'm getting way off subject, but I have a commercial building that I operate out of. And next door, we have rooms for rent. For like massage therapy. I have a medical doctor. I have a occupational therapist, physical therapist. But the phone calls I got, is there a shower? Can I live there? You know, because the rent is cheap versus residential living right now. So they're like, I can put a bed in there and if you have a shower, I'm good. You'd be like, so on actually on my Facebook ad today, I updated to say, you cannot live in these. You know, I'm sorry to say, you can't like, it's terrible. It's a terrible question to say. I'm just bad I have to even say this, but you
I mean,
can't.
I know a couple people that did that when they were going to college and stuff like that. You know, they have a little porta john in there and.
Yeah, live in their RV and have it there and
Right,
you're all
exactly.
set. You got everything.
But
that
no,
they
these are
need.
not designed to have an automotive shop out of unless it's your own car. I won't even sell it to someone who's gonna try and sell it like an auto mechanic because then you're gonna have junk everywhere, so.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
time.
Appreciate the feedback.
You want feedback?
No, they're yours if you want to keep.
You'll see it again.
So our next item, which is our last item, is just a discussion of the minimum lot size requirements. So as you guys know, we currently have a 20,000 square foot minimum in all zones. In fact, I can bring that up for you. There we go. Okay. This just shows the R1, R2 things, but they're all 20,000 square foot minimum. That's what it is for the entire city. The history of that, just so everybody's aware, is because we did not have sewer. And so you had to have square footage to put your own septic system in, a tank, whatever drain field, whatever type of system you wanted to put in. And so that is why we have that thing. We are nearing the sewer project. Is officially kicked off. Contract work has started. They already started grading the site. And so we're gonna have our own wastewater treatment plant. So with that, it's opened up a whole host of issues as we're starting to get applications for lots and developments in the city already, potentially. That will be coming forward. I know city council is discussing selling the land, right? That we own, as there's some potential people who want to put a development for a group of senior home type, assisted living type thing, potentially, or a series of homes. But all of those lots have to meet the current 20,000 square foot limit, which is pretty big. Because you told me, Wendy, last time an acre was what, 46,000, something like that?
43,560.
43,560.
Yeah, so it's almost a half an
Yeah,
acre.
so I mean, that's a pretty big lot
Mhm.
that our current restrictions are at. So one of the things that we were asked and tasked to talk about and potentially propose to city council is, should we be updating this now that in the next 2 years, we're gonna have sewer? And there are lots that you don't even meet the requirements, and it's like, okay, wait a second, do we really wanna have that? And as a comparison, Rochester has 6,000 square feet is what theirs. If I look at Rochester, 6,000 for a single family detached, 6,000 is their minimum lot size in R1. And that's typical of a lot of cities. You probably might know more with your real estate background. And so this would be the time that we propose it, because otherwise what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a whole lot of variances. And this committee and the city council, we're gonna have to do a bunch of things, just like we, if you guys remember, before we updated the accessory building code, right?
Yep.
And the sizes of those and everything, people kept having to come with variance after variance after variance. And after a while, then you start going, oh, my code's not up to date.
Right.
Because why is everything a variance? So with that, that is my proposal or open discussion for this group is, what do you think about lowering that requirement from 20,000 down to a smaller number? If so, what do you think that number should be? And then my recommendation then is we would make that recommendation to city council, let them discuss it. And then if they decide they agree or they want to change it, then we would actually put that as an agenda item for a public hearing, because that would be a code update. And so we have, just like before, when we amend the code, you got to have a public hearing for that. But that was this, that's what's on the table tonight. So
Well, the first question that comes to my mind, Paul, is how do you reconcile the difference between changing the code now and it being 2 years before the sewer and water project is complete?
Right.
And what's gonna happen to that piece of property if we change it? And
so
yeah, and they
you still
don't
have to
have,
meet, so if you're gonna build a house on it, you still have to meet Olmsted counties. They approve all of the sanitary waste disposal. So Olmsted County, whatever, if you're gonna build it, if we change, let's just say we say 10,000, 6,000, whatever the number is. And that's what it is. That's the minimum square footage. And somebody buys that, a 10,000 square foot lot, and they want to put a house on it. It still has a number of requirements that we have to meet from, distance from the street, distance from the side, that kind of stuff. And it still also has to get approved by Olmsted County for the current, because there's no sewer system. So what are you going to do?
okay, so
So Olmsted County approves that, not the city.
the homes that are outside of the city limits that have sewer and water
We
in,
don't, yeah,
then it's a requirement that's already in place.
it's already in place. Olmsted
Yeah.
County has one requirement for all of that. Everybody's got a meeting. So the city has nothing to do with that.
So the one thing I would question too, so we're doing it in the midst of water and sewer. And they've already laid out lots in terms of assessments. So if we change that, say someone has an acre or a 3 acre plot, let's just say an acre, maybe they're at the, higher than the minimum
Yeah,
now,
we have several, I forget how many are on that map up there behind you,
right?
that are undeveloped lots
Yep, so
that
say,
could be subdivided.
yeah,
And remember, Joe said they have the ability, you can subdivide it and we could put 2 hookups,
right.
3 hookups.
But my question
That's more.
would be is, okay, so let's say we have one of these lots, wherever, let's just say we have this lot, and let's say, for instance, this might have been maybe an acre lot, and now we're saying we're gonna drop that, and we're in the midst of water and sewer, then instead of 1 assessment, will that turn to 2 assessments? Because that's potentially 2 lots.
Each individual lot would have the ability to hook up.
Well,
So you-
and
you
it's even
double
less than
Each
that,
one of those is 1 unit.
because the minimum right now is 20,000 square feet, which is less than a half an acre.
Mhm,
It's just a hair under a half an acre.
right,
So are you talking about being able to split a half an acre lot into quarter acre lots and?
and can the city assess in the midst of this? So they've already said, okay, I mean, I look at mine, I mean, I've got property where they could say, okay, well, we're gonna look at this as 4 lots now.
And
And it
that's,
sets you extra for the times.
That's
10.
times
Yeah.
4. You
so
know,
keep in
and
mind.
there's a number of them with that.
Keep in mind, and this is where Joe could confirm this, you know, and we can discuss it further because Joe comes to your meetings.
Yep.
At city council, but you can subdivide any of a lot of those, like those large acre lots, you can subdivide that in easily 2 lots. And each of those lots could be, have a separate service, and they would each count as 1 unit, and they get their whatever 8,000-ish charge, right? For all the hookup fees and everything else, and that'd be 2 users instead of 1. Some of the undeveloped lots right now have the ability to have that hookup or not, right? We offer those
Yep.
things to many people. You would have that opportunity to do that.
Right.
So the sewer project can service it. We have the capacity to do that.
Right.
And like I said, there's already stuff coming to council, or going to be coming to us and then council for existing properties that don't meet this. And so this is just, and this is even before we're still 2 years away from it, right?
Right.
We're really talking end of 2023, right?
In summertime.
You know, so it's like the thought process was just to get ahead of this sooner than later, because otherwise there's going to be a whole lot of variances around this.
Yep.
And it doesn't make sense to keep granting variances and variances if we just need to update our code. And what I've seen from other communities is 6,000 to 8,000 is typically around the minimum. So it's usually around, seems to be around like a quarter, you know, sort of, you know, sizes of what they consider minimum buildable for R1, R2.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about is R1, R2 here.
If you're asking for a square foot, I mean, I'm more of a country boy, I'd aim more towards 8,000 square foot minimum, just so we have a little more space between houses. and
And for
things.
something like that, you can think that's like what, 80 by 100 foot lot, right? 80 foot by.
Or even a little bit bigger than that, to go to 10,000 if you're
Yeah.
gonna do it, you know, cut it in half, because, I mean, that's one of the nice things about Orinoco is you want to have a little bit of that uniqueness that there is and have it built into the city. And if somebody wants to do it and make it smaller than that, then to do it as a variance, you know, that you could still do that same way. But have that larger lot sizes, which is, you know, I think makes this whole community what it is.
And if you recall back
Yeah, that was
from-
one of the reasons that we were attracted to this community
Because a lot.
is because
Yeah.
it was more of a unique country kind of feel, but it was still absolutely a neighborhood, you know?
Well, and keep in mind, when we did approve the tiny home subdivision code, we also still kept some distances between the homes because we didn't want you to reach out your window and be like, hey, Jim, is that going on with sugar?
Well, remember, we're from California and so we understand.
5 foot from the house to the property line and then 5 foot from that to your neighbor's wall.
Yeah.
So literally,
Yeah, there's some neighborhoods over northwest Rochester that are,
Yeah.
gotta be pretty close to that. It's like,
well, and I think that
wow,
there's some,
that's
I think there's
small.
some older neighborhoods over there that must have been before the existing code that they have, because I've shown houses that are like on 4,365 square foot lots. And I think that those things were built before they ever put the 6,000, you know, limit restriction in there. And even a 6,000 square foot lot is like the size of a postage stamp,
Yep.
you know? And I don't,
1/7 of an acre, right?
yeah, I don't think we wanna
You don't
go
wanna do
to
that.
postage stamp size,
No,
yeah.
and so I only showed you Rochester as a comparison. That doesn't mean that's what we have to go for. This is why we're having this discussion
Mhm.
is, you know, so this is what I'm hearing. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong. I think I heard Mark say 8 and then I heard Jim say 10. You know, it seems like the more we talk, we're like, okay, yeah, 20 is probably too high. But we could probably cut that in half to 10.
We'll go with
Yeah.
10.
I would go 10.
Is that what I'm hearing?
You know, that as I'm showing houses in Rochester, the houses that are on a 10,000 square foot lot, it feels like a nice size for a kind of tight knit neighborhood. it doesn't feel like it is really restrictive, but you're still absolutely in a, a housing tract. But 10,000 is kind of nice.
And
Because
then,
again, you could always, if you could have a variance if you wanted to go over and above that, but at least you could.
Or below that.
Below that, sorry.
no, I heard you say, because like, especially if the property doesn't, isn't conducive for, maybe there's an easement or building, you can't build on the back, so now you're gonna have less than that. It's like, okay, well, what do you do? So we always have variance roads. So,
Well, let me ask you this, Paul, with the houses that are set to be built and the variances that you anticipate that would be coming in, what is the timeline that you think those, variance after variance is gonna be rolling in here?
so,
If you could guesstimate that timeline.
so I know that they had, the people who wanted to put the proposal together and buy the lots, depending on what the city's decision was, wanted to start building immediately. Like instantly, like they were ready to come and then put together some paperwork potentially. And that was just the first of several different things. And there were others looking at land to do the same. So I don't know what the final number is going to be, and I don't know, because, talk and then getting an actual piece of paper that somebody paid the city to look at is two different things, right? But I think the one thing I can guarantee you, as we get closer and closer to having sewer, the land around here is more attractive, right? Because that's what everybody wants. And so because of the process, public hearing, council having to prove everything else, the only thought process was better to start ahead of the problem than wait for everything to come through and then have to deal with it on the back
Right.
end. So that's why I wanted to bring this up as a discussion point for today's meeting.
Well, and one of the other things that I see is in our neighborhood, they've built so many houses, and even though most of them are on an acre lot, they have one cul-de-sac that is brand new. I think it's called River Bend. And those houses, they subdivided each of those lots. There is so much traffic now in our neighborhood. What is subdividing all of these lots that developers want to come in and build? What is that going to do to the surface traffic in all of the areas
So,
in and out
yes,
of those
yeah, and those,
spaces?
so when we look at those things, those are all things that will be looked at. I can tell you right now, though, the lots that they're talking about are the ones that the city owns. It's only having 2 or 3 homes, so you're adding 2 or 3 homes.
Okay.
It's not.
I was
20.
thinking development,
No, there is no large open area other than over probably in Cedar Woodlands that has wide open space that's set for R1, R2 right now, where you have a large wide open space that you could do building, but none of that space is actually slated for sewer for 20 years. So that is out of the current project's phase. So that will not be likely developed anytime soon because of that. So the areas that we are talking about that will be serviced, you have like 2 or 3 lots. So at most you have 2 or 3 homes that those lots, because they're not huge now. And so you could, and if you keep the 10,000 square foot minimum, you probably only be able to put 2 on there anyways.
I
So-
think of the larger lot size. I mean, for families, it's nice to have a backyard where the kids can play, instead of being out in the street or whatever. So.
And
Yeah.
if that's the only place in town that we're really talking about is this one property?
I think there's 2 or 3 in the one area, and then there's a couple, because the city owns actually a bunch, and then the church owns that chunk by the pines, right?
Yeah.
That's open by the pines that we use for the gold rush. That's the church's property, I believe. So that could be potentially, I guess, subdivided.
So all the properties that we're talking about are basically owned by the city of Orinoco, and
A bunch are.
we're
There's
talking
some.
about reducing the restriction on that so that the city can sell those off more easily, or what?
No, because the one proposal that came forward was to put potentially 2 or 3 homes on a lot that would not be 60,000 square feet for the current rules to do that. So they would have to come in with a variance. But the point that was brought up by Joe Palin and at the sewer committee, is that that requirement was set because you have to have septic and drain field.
Right.
When that goes away, you don't have to have those large sizes. You can still have those large sizes if you want to, but it's not required to have that.
Because you're not on septic.
Right.
Because you could always turn around and buy 2 lots if you wanted to do it that way and go back to where it was at, so.
Yeah, I think putting that on the. So you just need to make.
So I was just to have a discussion about it. If we think 10,000 is a good number, we can just put that as a recommendation and let council talk about it. Remember, council's got to decide.
Right.
They're the one, we only recommend. Council makes the final decisions. But if it's something that we think has merit, and that's why I brought it up, it's just, do we think it has merit? If we think it has merit and we should update it, then it'd be better to update it sooner than wait and have to do a bunch of variances later.
And so let's say, for example, that the 20,000 went down to 10,000, all of the other thing, the street line, building line, front yard, all of that stuff would remain the same.
That's totally up to us. So
Mhm.
that's why I have it up here, is we control all of that. So when we put together the tiny home ordinance, remember, we set all of those criteria. We're like, well, how many feet do you want between neighbors? We're like, well, at least 20, because to your point, then it's 40 feet between tiny homes, right? Which the tiny home itself is like only 40 feet. So it's like, okay, well, that feels pretty spaced out as opposed to how you doing?
So in the front yard and the rear yard with the 25 feet, is that 25 feet from the wall, the exterior wall of the house to the property line? 25 feet isn't very much either, is it?
These are what's in our current codes. What I have up is just so you know is what is. Our
It's what we
current.
currently go by. Oh,
So
okay.
that's the minimums for things. And for the street, I don't remember, maybe Mark, you might, for this one, is that to the middle of the street? Or
Yeah, I believe so.
Because I remember them saying, because I always thought it was to the edge of the street, but I actually think it measures to
It
the
is
middle
in the center.
of the street. I don't know why that is.
And is that like from the front door or from the edge of the
The
front
edge of
porch?
if this is your outside wall, so I believe it
Okay.
goes from your exterior, whatever's the first thing. So if your garage is pushed forward, that garage
Gotta be
is
the garage,
attached.
yeah.
It's just whatever the first wall is.
Wall
yeah.
is?
They measure from there to the middle of the street.
Okay.
I suppose, what if
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
widened the
yeah,
road, then they
yeah,
come back to you and say
yeah.
your house is too close.
Well, and what if you had a massive front porch,
So
Yeah,
if you're 50 feet from the middle, you're
Well, I
always
think
gonna be
that- I
50
think 'cause
feet
if
from
the
the
front
middle.
porch is covered and everything, I think it would count to the end of that.
oh, okay,
It's whatever.
See, that
jut-
makes more
jut-
sense.
Yeah,
It goes whatever
furthest
juts out.
protruding part of the structure.
Yeah,
okay.
they measure from there to the,
I think some of
That
that has to do with
makes much
snow,
more
re-
sense.
make sure there's enough for snow removal and
Yeah.
things like that, but.
so. Thoughts on those criteria? So what I'm hearing is people seem to be in favor of 10,000 here.
Yeah,
Is,
Yep.
these things seem reasonable? Would you want those to change?
has there been issues with that, with people or?
Well, so the only thing that you'd have to consider is, okay, so now let's just, this is now 10,000, let's just pretend it is. Okay, so now, right, you have to go, okay, well, what can I put on there? 100 by 100, so you have to go, okay, well, what kind of, is the property 80 by, whatever.
Yeah,
What it is to get to 10,000, right? So that's what you gotta go and then say, once I have that box, right? So that, if this box is now my new thing, now I put a house in here and I gotta keep
And you got setbacks.
25 feet here, so much feet here, so much feet here, and then a backyard. Now I can only put a house of X size on that property, right?
Right.
So that's where these come into play, because it's not just lots. Well, what can you then put on that lot?
Well, I mean, we almost need to have a builder come in with some blueprints to see what's really going on with that. And see that, even if we drop that down to, let's say, 10,000 square feet. Okay, let's see how the other would fit in there. It might fit, we don't know. Okay, depending upon what a house would look like.
But the thing is, like, I just showed a property over the weekend that if you walk up the driveway like this and the house is here, and it was a really beautiful house, the property line went down the side of this house just a few feet away from the exterior wall. And it went probably 20, 25 feet, you know, back. And then it went like an arrowhead
Mm.
off in a direction that if the house is like this, the point of the arrowhead of the property line went way over here. So there's irregular
Wow.
shapes and
Yeah.
lot sizes and things. So
So it
it's
almost
tough
is-
to come up with like a formula
Yeah.
that's gonna be applicable in every
I
situation.
think, yeah,
Because
that's,
properties, they take them and they cut
Yeah,
pie
just
shapes
leave
and
it.
different
Well,
things.
You can look at all the
I think
lots,
so.
we don't
And then
exist
see
in
what
perfect
happens.
squares.
Exactly,
Rectangles.
exactly.
I think I would just change it if we're gonna do it to put the proposal down to 10,000, leave everything else the same and see what happens. You know, and see if we're doing too many variances and say, okay, maybe we have to take another look at it, but to leave that and then just cut down the,
No,
the,
like I
the
said,
square
this is
foot.
good, this is an open discussion. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to recommend and the one nice thing too about this is this year is something new. The city council has given additional funds to Stantec to help us. What does that mean to us? It means we have an expert in Stantec that we can go to for clarification, advice, design. So when we come with some tough questions or decisions, they can even help us with preparing recommendations, resolutions. Before, we always had to go to the city attorney to help draft certain language and stuff. But now there's actually money in the budget for Stantec to help with planning and zoning questions. That also is good because Renee, so our city clerk, who also is the commissioner of planning and zoning, can also, as applications come in, have another expert advice from Stantec, who does consulting for planning and zoning for other communities as well. So we have that extra resource who can also help us, you know, when we actually, you know, if we say 10,000, we can have them look at it and do a little thing and say, okay, if you update this to your codes, because they'll look at our current code and say, if you do this, here's a problem that you're gonna have. And then they'll tell us
Mhm.
as well. So remember, we're not looking to change this next month.
Right.
Okay, this is just, I wanted to bring it up as a discussion point
Mhm.
to raise the issue because it's going to come up, to have city council also start to think about it. And then also, again, we have this extra now advising capacity with Stantec to then say, okay, we talked about it. Based on this, we think 10,000, we don't want to change anything else. City council says, yeah, I like that idea. Then we tell them, what, you see issues with this? Should we change anything else? How will that fit into the codes? They'll also tell us if you want to add these also additional conditions, you know, that you want to do to protect our community so that we still have some of those features like you guys had talked about and why you moved here. So they'll guide us that way.
Mhm.
So that's something that we haven't had in the past, that we have now.
Yeah, because I'd be interested if there are properties around town right now that are actually pushing the limits
Oh,
of
yeah,
the,
we have properties right now that are in violation. And if you actually look at the drawings, they're technically like were built on city property or in variances and stuff. It just. there
well,
are-
and I mean, even if they, and what I was thinking more specifically is if they were built within the code. And what does it look like when I'm looking at a line of properties that are 25 feet from that front yard line, you know, to the center of the street? And what does that actually visually look like as I drive down the street of a neighborhood that has pushed all the limits, but they are absolutely within the code as it exists right now? I would want to see what that looks like, to see if we're gonna make smaller lots and the houses are actually gonna be closer together. Maybe we would want to adjust that stuff and create a little bit more space from the edges so that it didn't like just totally look
That's
crowded.
one thing that Stanley can also say they have to help with this is they can do research because they also know other communities that have different rules and things.
Mhm.
And they can gather that and say, here's an example of a community that has this, and here's a subdivision that went in with these rules. This is what it looks like.
No, that would be so
Yeah,
helpful.
you know, I mean, if you look at River Bend and you look at the houses that there are from the front, you know, the yard that there is, okay, if those were done with this, those houses are relatively close to the street, okay? The front yard is not that big, so that's where you wouldn't want to really, okay, we'll bring the houses that much closer. And we've seen communities like that in California, and it doesn't look very well.
Right.
You know, and so making, you know, when I was up at, in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, we had a deal with city council that got together with League of Minnesota Cities. And a bunch of the councilmen were there talking, and the cities had gone in and said, okay, we want to have affordable type housing. And so they turned around and made the lot smaller to say, okay, we're gonna have affordable housing. In reality, they built the same size big houses on the smaller lots, and it didn't work. And it made a mess out of everything. So those were just comments that came back
Well, the
about
property was
other
cheaper than
communities.
that. Smaller property meant it was cheaper land.
That's it, but bigger, that the house just was the same size. So, yeah, you're watching what's going on, you know, in
Well, I think it
Minnesota right now.
increases the ability of the city to collect tax too, because they're assessing on the improvement to the property as well as the property itself, right? And so you've got more pieces of property, but you've got a house that's gonna assess at that higher value still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It does, yeah. You know, the other one thing I will just point out too, that keep in mind, we always, and this has happened already, here in the city, is because some of our topography, and or things, are such that if you tried to build on one of the lots, you couldn't, because of that. But that's why we have variances in play
Right.
for that. You know, hey, look, I got a cliff on this, I ain't gonna be able to put a house here, I'm not gonna, you know, suspend it, cantilever it off the side. So then I have to get a variance to say, well, instead of having 25 feet in the front yard, I'm gonna have 20 feet because I gotta move the house here, so I have a solid foundation. But that's what variances are for,
Right.
so that's why we have those in our code,
And what we're saying here is, we're saying this is minimum,
yes.
you know, you have to be a minimum of that, and if their lot's big enough, I mean, they can go further back.
Yeah. So one of the things that I know as we expand and looked, when we did our future land use planning, right? We created a lot of R1 space. You know, if you look at our zoning map here and future stages and stuff, we kept a lot of stuff as a bigger thing, because one of the demands that we saw, you know, one of our things that we liked about Orinoco, this was a planning and zoning, one of our things that came out of that was we took down notes, is we like the country type feel where you have the larger space. People are looking for acre size lots because you don't want to be on top of your neighbor. And so that is some of the land that actually sells the quickest when you open that up, is because people want that. And so all of those things play into what we think, what we wanted, but also what would others want, right? To make it, so from a developer standpoint, what's gonna sell, right?
Right.
You know, I know Rochester has gone to more condensed living. They like to put more people downtown as well, in high rises, smaller lot sizes and things. But then you hear all the people that usually come out to Orinoco is like, I'm getting away from that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And that's what I'm saying, that's what you want to have is that.
So,
type
so,
of-
so we want to be very careful,
Yeah.
because the one thing that protects us is the code.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm showing a lot of really beautiful houses that are new. And they are, you know, between 2,500 and 4,000 square feet. But they are really, really close to their next door neighbors. I mean, literally from here to that wall is the distance between the two the two houses.
And they could mow their lawn with a weed eater, probably.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's
Exactly.
California stuff.
Or their property drops off, and so you don't have a lot of usable property on 6,000 square foot lot, you know?
Right.
And honestly, I'm showing people those houses, and I'm getting the same comments all the time. There's no yard. And my neighbor's right there. And it's this big, gorgeous house. And I mean, a couple of these houses are like 4,800 square feet, 5,200 square feet.
You're
You
gonna
know,
have a family that's gonna be
they're-
living in something
They're
like that.
$950,000, and the people are, they're ready to spend the money, but they look at the lot and they go, nope, I love the house, but the lot it's not gonna work.
To get
And
the
we-
space, they have to buy too.
Yeah, and we don't
But
want
it's not available.
to find
you know,
ourselves in
it's
that
just-
position where we've got these beautiful homes
Yeah,
that
and-
nobody wants to live in because the lot is so tiny.
And then Sandtech might come back again and say, well, 10,000 isn't right, might have to be 12,000. Which would still take up the difference of what you're looking at for the septic system and that type of stuff too, but. I wanna keep Orinoco as much as we can with the uniqueness of what it is. Yeah.
Because that's what attracts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think it can grow and still maintain its very, special characteristic that it has, and that is that you're in a city, but it feels like you're living in the country at the same time. It's so amazing. So,
So does everyone think that 10,000 is our magic number?
I'd like
Is
to
there
talk
any
to the
worry
guys
that
at
it's too
Stantec.
small?
Well, I'm just
I would go
saying,
less than that.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I'd
never
say
really
that's-
wanna go
12,
less
So
than
how
that. I
about
would
this?
worry.
All right, I'm gonna make a recommendation. Because we have some quote Stantec dollars, as I call them.
I like
It's limited, okay, it's not an unlimited thing because let's just admit, engineering costs are not cheap, so,
Mhm.
if you only get a couple hours worth of time, we don't wanna overuse it,
Right,
we wanna use it responsibly.
and wisely, absolutely.
So what I recommend is make the motion that take 10,000, propose it back to Stantec as opposed to council first. Let Stantec look at it and say, hey, we had initial discussion around this. Here's the chart in our code. And here's our thought. Does that seem right? Do you see any issues or problems or flaws with that we're missing, that we're not thinking about prior to proposing it to council? So that way we can kind of have the experts look at what we're thinking. If they say, actually, that'd be very reasonable, that makes sense. Your other numbers I wouldn't change, or they come back and say, to your point, 12,000 would be better.
Mhm.
Here's why you guys have missed this whole key thing that you didn't even talk about.
Yeah, I'd like to see it come back to planning.
No, it would come back to planning.
Yeah,
So,
and
so
then-
what I recommend is
And then
in
they're
between
gonna-
now and April, Stantec
Right.
would look
Yeah.
at it, that I could get, essentially what they would give us back is a report.
And if they understand that the concern of P and Z is that we want to be able to accommodate people, but we don't want to sacrifice the appeal of the community to do it. It's like if we can do both of those things simultaneously, that would be
Perfect.
the
I
sweet
wrote
spot.
that word for word.
Okay,
That's going in my thing to them. All right. Does that sound like a fair approach? That's my motion.
I think that sounds good.
Is there
I
a
second.
second?
I second it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Beautiful. All right, well, that was our last thing on the agenda. It is 8:00. Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I.
Fantastic. Thank you all for coming. Oh, wait, you had something.
I was gonna say, oh, yeah, it's a mail pen. No, I asked Paul if I could resign. I've been on this for 10 years. Just need some time off. Work is work right now. I'm down 35% of my staff, so it's gonna get worse by summer. But anyway, I did retire from the Air Force. It's finally being pushed through now. I actually wanted to retire in December, but everything there was a glitch, of course, with the government, but this past Monday, they're pushing it through now, probably just in time for whatever else is going on in the world. So anyway, just want a little more time with the family, probably take maybe a year and a half, 2-year hiatus just to kind of get things settled back down
So are you looking to make this effective?
next month.
So next month will be your last meeting or this is your last?
This
meeting?
will be my last meeting.
I don't know. Do we have to accept this?
Well, before we decide if we accept that, I want to thank you for your years of service in the
Yes.
military.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I think 10 years is an extremely respectable amount of time.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank you for your
to-
service to
absolutely.
this.
Community, yeah.
And so
Community
the
and to
committee
this
does
committee.
recognize Mark has been an invaluable asset to this group. When I joined, how long have I been on it?
6, I don't know, 4.
4 or 5 years now. Mark has always been my source of knowledge and expertise, and it's always been a pleasure to have him and hear his thoughts and contribute positively to our community. And so his years of service have not gone unnoticed by myself or the city. And so we do, Mark, thank you sincerely for all of your service. And while we don't want you to go, I also feel you've earned it.
And I don't wanna go either. You also get some new members. Go, oh God, no, I gotta, but
You can always come back.
Yeah, that's what I
The
figured.
city is always willing to take you back on the committee.
yeah. And just, like I said, with the military, that's been still an adjustment trying to get, again, I'll get a third of my weekends back every year now after 32 years, so. But, yeah, it's just like, I just need to just kind of reset myself a little bit, and if it worked the way it's going, it's just like,
it's been a rough couple of years.
man, gosh, yeah.
So
So,
that does mean, so Mark is vice chair of this committee. So while I am chair, we do need a new vice chair, and it cannot be a council member. So you two automatically get a pass, which leaves 2 people in the room that have to wrestle or whatever you want to do. But I.
Are we all that's left?
I will take that's volunteer.
I mean, there's not people that are on the planning and zoning that just aren't here tonight.
So Jose is the only other member on this team, but he's also missed a number of meetings now. And so I don't know his willingness to commit, because technically after you miss 3 meetings, you're not supposed to be on the committee anymore without calling, because quorum is a big deal.
Yep.
We, as you guys know, we have public hearings. People are paying to be here. You heard from one of our applicants tonight. They have a timeline to get out or buy that deal,
Right.
right? And so when we don't show up, that makes the city look bad. And so at any point in time, when you guys get those things, please email. That's why I had to get your phone numbers again. Is because if you're not going to be here, and if we don't have quorum, then we have an issue. We don't want people to pay money, come to here, and then we don't show up.
Yeah.
And so with our committee size, we have to have 4 people here at a minimum. And there were times, I think, you were sick at home and I had to call you to Zoom so we
Yes.
could have quorum on a public hearing.
That's right.
And that's very challenging.
Yeah.
And so I will ask, Jose, do you have his contact number? Because every time I call it, it says it's not in service.
oh, I can talk to his wife tomorrow.
Okay, if you can talk to his wife and just confirm if he wants to stay on or not.
Yeah.
Because at this point, we'll have 2 openings then, if he says no. So we have to recruit. So also think about if there's people in the community that you know and volunteer, and they can put an ad in the newsletter here too. But if you know somebody who would like to get involved, I'm always like, planning and zoning is pretty nice because you get to see what's happening first in the community and be a part and help shape the community and what we become in the future. So it's a very important role. However, I would still look to the 2 of you to be a potential vice chair, because I need somebody with experience who can also chair when I'm not here, because like Mark, I'm working 80 hours a week right now at Mayo Clinic. And I still got a family and kids and things that I got to do stuff at home with. But there are times I have to travel for my job as well and give lectures around the world. So I can't always make this meeting. So I need somebody to then take over my absence as well. So think about it.
Well, and I have a question. So if for the people that, the vacancies that are,
Coming up.
are coming up, do the people have to live in the city of Orinoco, or can they live in the township, or how does that work?
Mark, do you know the answer to that?
I want to say it's gonna be within city limits.
I thought it had to be
Yeah.
That
city
makes
limits.
sense to me
Yeah.
too.
That's what I always.
Because all of a
I
sudden,
think
I just
You're
started
making
thinking about
decisions and
different
you're not
people,
here,
and I'm
yeah.
going, oh, wait, they're in the township, they're in the
Everybody
township.
I know this lives in the city limits.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's gotta be within the city
So
limits.
You have to be a resident.
Yeah.
And so the way it works too is all we'd ask them to do is come introduce themselves to us.
Mhm.
However, council actually approves their appointment on this committee, not us.
I remember.
Yep. Remember? So you introduce yourself, we said, hey, we like you.
It was grueling, right?
We council makes the thing, but so in all seriousness, though, we will need a vice chair. Are any of
That's a
you,
look.
are any of you more excited or interested? Mark can tell you how much fun it is.
I know for me, the amount of camping that we do from April through October, and we usually leave on Thursdays. You know,
I mean, Thursday, 8 o'clock is a good time to leave. Still can leave on Thursday. I'm not telling you to.
Minneapolis.
You know, as vice chair, you can make the meeting go faster.
The point is, he's usually getting it back by 8:30.
Well, and I mean, I'm enjoying being part of the committee here. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but I'm running for the Minnesota House of Representatives. I'm a declared candidate.
I did not know that.
Even more qualification.
Well, and here's the thing, if that is something that I would be able to juggle, then, and I don't know the answer to that question right at this moment. I know that from January through May is when they have the first session at the Capitol, the first legislative session. And then they have another legislative session that I think is only a couple of months later on in the, like at the end of the summer or the fall, right in there. I have to figure all of that out, but I will absolutely think about it, but I wouldn't want to take something on that I would become a liability because my schedule, you know, gets crazy.
Totally understand. So.
But
I'm not
here's the
asking
thing.
Anybody to commit
Here's the
now.
thing also, is that the election's not until November. And, you know, God willing, if I win, then I wouldn't be in the legislature until January. So that would be 9 months anyways.
So you could do it even as a stint,
Yeah.
if it turns out that you can't do it after.
So.
Just look
think
good
about
on your ticket.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Vice chair of the Orinoco Planning Zone.
He's selling
Yeah,
it.
baby.
So I'm not making anybody. Both of you think about it and we'll talk about it at our next meeting because I will need a vice chair. We do need one. So with that, also keep in mind, please just think about other candidates. If there's other people, and Mark, if you know somebody.
Laura had expressed interest at one point
Yeah.
to me, Laura sent.
Yeah.
But,
Who?
Dan and Laura, they
Oh,
lived
Laura
on
Quest.
Quest, no, why did I say sense? Well, that's my,
I knew who you're talking about.
that's my infection control. All right, the Laura Quest, yeah, she had expressed interest. As far as the vice chair, I mean, Paul does probably 75 to 90% of everything, if not 100% sometimes, so. I mean, I think it's just, what he's looking for is more just confirmation of what he's thinking, and the city, it's been quiet the last few months, but the city will sometimes send us stuff and just ask us for our opinion on a certain thing, and we just, most of that stuff nowadays, maybe because I've been here so long that, you know, it's kind of like, oh yeah, you look in the codes, like, yep, I mean, it takes you 5-10 minutes and it's usually done. It's nothing.
The biggest responsibilities, in all honesty, of both the chair and the vice chair jobs is a week before the meeting, I have to put together the agenda and give it to city council, and then they email it out to the group because we're not allowed to communicate it by, right? Public rules, violation rules. So creating an agenda tonight when I go home, because we don't have a secretary, really, I type everything up. And then I email it at like midnight to Mark and to the city and say, here's our minutes. Mark, make sure they look good as well. And then the city has them, so then it goes on record on the website, as then also can be sent out to our packet for next month. Otherwise, like Mark said, there's just times we'll get some emails or questions from Renee as applications come in and just say, hey, can you look at this? And it's something that will just look at the code and be like, yeah, okay, that looks like it would fit in that zone, or no, like their case. When they came in, the first thing I did is I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't fit in, I thought that property went back to B2. I'm like, you can't go in B2. And then the lawyer confirmed what I said was right. And then that's how it, so there's little things that come up. However, now with the Stantec constellation, she's also including them in and saying, hey, is this right?
Yeah, just.
And so we have that extra service who's probably a lot more knowledgeable than Mark and I combined, because they've been doing, that's their job. And so there's that. So it's not an overwhelming thing, but it's an important thing. And again, because there are going to be some meetings that I can't make it, and somebody's got to share those meetings.
Is your traveling schedule increasing coming up from what it's been?
Every single, so this month, the next 4 months, I will be gone 1 week, every single month, traveling and lecturing. around the world.
And you don't know if it's the week that we meet or not?
So I do know for this year, I have my travel schedule through July. That's known to me. But in November, because I'm also on the board of directors for my professional organization, but I also do house visits with senators and things in Congress for law and legislation stuff for healthcare. So I don't have dates for some of those fall meetings. But most of my stuff, I do know most of my dates in advance. So I'll know if any of them meet, and I purposely try to avoid the second Thursdays so that I'm trying to be here or available for all of them. But there are some also like potential family vacations or things where I'm not going to be here. And no offense, but my family also needs to see me too.
Well, that's just asking too much. I'm so sorry. No, and honestly, you know, between now and July would probably be easier if I were to, you know, step into that vice chair position. It would be easier for me to go, oh, I can cover that stuff. November may be a little bit intense for me too, you know? But it's gonna be the first Tuesday of November up to that point. And then by the first Wednesday of November, you know, considering however the days fall, then my schedule may open up a little bit for either a couple of months or for a really long time, depending on the result.
If you get, you know, a few months under your belt, then it kind of starts just flowing pretty easy. I mean, there's
Well,
not
and
a,
that's the thing that I understand too, is like, right now, I think about it, and it's like, holy cow. You know, I mean, I read some of these codes and everything in here, and I'm like, I gotta read that 4 times because it said, wah, 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 wah.
That lawyer speaking.
yeah.
Exactly.
So I will say, like I said, this is a lot easier than they have for council, because they have all of the council meetings, plus the special meetings, plus the committee meetings. They have a lot more things where we have a once a month, you know, I always liked that. It was like, okay, and it was fixed. It is fixed up right now on the
Right.
second Thursday, so that's the only meeting we have to come
Right.
to. It makes it a whole lot more easy schedule to plan around.
And this committee really has no teeth.
I know that.
Because it goes to us and
Yep.
we have to do it. and
Yeah,
then,
yeah. The other thing I will say is, I'm also very cognizant, if we don't have anything to talk about, I will cancel the meeting. If you've noticed, that's why November, December, January, I did not have any important late breaking thing to call. He did want to come because of the timing of it, so that's why I kept this meeting, because we actually were gonna have a public hearing at this meeting originally.
Mhm.
But otherwise, we canceled, because I wanna be respectful of everybody's time. And everybody's busy, and so why get you together if we're not going to do something?
Right.
Right.
So that's the one nice thing about us, is if there is nothing, if we have 0 public hearings, nothing to talk about, we don't just meet to meet. I mean, not that I don't want to see you, okay, but I want to be respectful.
Absolutely. Very good.
All right, so with that, it's now 8:16. I know now, take a motion from Jim and a second from Scott to adjourn at 8:16 PM, because I almost forgot, sorry about that.
Oh, don't worry.
Well,
Congratulations.
thank you for all your years of
Thank you.
service
Thank you.
Thank
on
you.
all these different fronts, and
Yeah, I mean, I want to come back. I just,
it's time to
No, you
decompress,
don't.
right?
it's, this is probably one of the best places to be. Mine is probably the volunteer fire department, anywhere you used to have a drink of beer or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we don't have a tap here. That's-
Maybe we gotta get one of those. How do we make that, how do we put that on the agenda, Paul?
No, but I really appreciate it. It's been rewarding. There's obviously some of those meetings that you're sitting here and you're like, oh boy, where's the pitchforks? You know, everything's here but the pitchforks on some of those people.
There's been some that